We're live, episode 001, the performance hierarchy, the long awaited episode one. We've got Coach David over here. We got myself, Coach Henry. We are very excited to launch this. The reason we say long awaited is because I was on the bad end of a bug. I've been a little sick, and last week I was like coughing my lungs up, and he has some editing skills, and he goes, "Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna be able to edit all those coughs every 3 seconds." So we're here. We're ready to ready to do what we got to do, and we're excited.
Well, we're here now. That's all that matters.
We're here. We made it happen. Uh, this is something that we just kind of came up with the idea recently, but to be honest, it's kind of been in the background for a very long time. A little bit about my background, just so you guys kind of know who I am. I'm Coach Henry. I'm a trainer. I'm an athletic trainer. I've been working in the Temecula Valley since 2010. I've been in the industry for about 17 years. I've worked with all sorts of athletes, from professional athletes to collegiate athletes. Mr. David over here,
Injured athletes.
injured athletes, a lot of injured athletes.
Yeah.
And to be honest, a lot of general population. I started in the space in 2007. I grew up playing sports my whole life, always been active, had a passion for it. And here we are. So what we're going to be doing with this podcast is strictly directed towards athletes, more specifically 18 and under. If you're over 18, we believe you're an athlete too. So shout out to all the dads out there who are
Still playing in the
athletes.
sports in the
Yep,
summer, in the
still doing
adult
it.
sports.
I'm 30. I'm 36, and I still try to keep up with my kids. I play basketball. I've been in adult leagues. I've trained jiu-jitsu. I've been training jiu-jitsu for almost 4 years now. I've always been very competitive, and now seeing my kids playing sports and them saying, "Hey, Dad, let's go throw a ball." I want to be able to do those things. So a lot of things have I've experienced. I have a lot of experience. I have a lot of stories. We're going to go over all those stories. But our number one goal with this podcast is to impact the next generation. Simple as that. We want to impact the next generation of athletes, not just physically. We want to give these athletes a chance to succeed if they want to go to college, if they want to make that varsity team, maybe they want to dominate in Pop Warner. It doesn't really matter. We want athletes to be successful on the field, but more importantly, uh, we want athletes to be successful off the field. We want them to be good humans. If an athlete doesn't go to college, doesn't make it pro, but they're a high functioning human, they're good for society, and they're respectful, and they have work ethics, and they have goals and ambitions. That's our goal, is to just impact. And that's kind of that's always been my driving force and my motivation. What makes me jump out of bed is saying, "Hey, how can I help these kids? How can I help these clients? How can I help people, make a difference?" So we are going to be talking about everything sports performance, from speed to strength to power to politics to psychology, um, anything that has to do within the realm of sports. We are also going to have guests on our podcast, which we're pretty excited about. And the guests are going to be anybody who's making an impact in athletes. I've met a lot of great coaches over the years. I've met coaches from schools. I've met coaches, like skill specific coaches. I know some good pitching coaches, hitting coaches. I know some other speed coaches. And to be honest, I feel a lot of these coaches, they're the ones that I respect, the ones that I think are awesome. They're in the cave actually doing the work, and you don't see them on social media. So a lot of the people that I feel are the best, or people that I respect,
Aren't out there for everyone to see.
they're not. They're not. And unfortunately, we see a lot of things on social media. You'll have a person who maybe they're fit, they're in shape, and then they go, "Hey, I'm a trainer. Let me be responsible for your kid, and I'm going to help your kid get better." And it's awesome, because I've been there. I remember when I first started, I was like super ecstatic. I remember I was 18 years old when I got into the gym and started working as a personal trainer at a local LA Fitness. I'll never forget that. And I remember just being so excited. I was like, man, I want to help out everybody. I want to work with athletes and I want to do all these different things. And I realized I was like, man, I don't know shit.
Yeah, there's more to it than it entails. I remember
Yeah,
that's what I learned when I started working out with you back in high school. I was like, damn, I didn't realize there's so many different things you have to actually pay attention to be able to move in an athletic way. Like your body has to function. And so when I started my path, I was like, I need to go to the source. I need someone who's actually going to teach me the correct foundation for this, because the last thing you want to do is hurt anyone. But at
correct,
the time, you want to give them the best possible chance they have at whatever it is they're trying to do. And
correct.
Henry, you want to look if I come out and shadow you or something like that? And we sit down, talk, maybe go over it.
This is pretty cool. So a little background story of Coach David. So I started working with him when he was in high school. He's a basketball player, sharpshooter, um, and at the time he was dealing with an injury, a shoulder injury.
Yeah, slap tear, labrum slap tear.
Yeah, not fun. And you kind of need your shoulders if you're trying to shoot, shoot
Yeah,
some 3 pointers. You need good shoulders. So he came, and we were able to work through some things and get him to, number one, be out of pain and get back on the court and worked on his speed, his strength, and then he went on his journey. He reached out to me a few months back, and he said, "Hey, I just got out the Marine Corps. He can explain that story." And said, "Hey, can I come shadow? I want to shadow you. Are you still training?" I said, "Of course I am." I said, "Come hang out." And he came and shadowed some of my clients and some of the sessions with some of the athletes I was working with. And then we went and got coffee. And then we just started talking for a very, very long time. And then we started doing this on a weekly basis, like going in over every topic sports performance. He was asking me about like different education, where I should learn, and we would have these long conversations, and that's kind of where we're like, imagine if we just
yeah.
recorded this.
It'd be like 30. It would feel like 20 minutes, but then we look down and it's like 3 hours later, and I was like, oh, it's
Yeah.
got to get into it so much, but it's something that we love to do. So time just goes by so fast, you don't realize it.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And now here we are. We get to sit down. We got a camera. We get to talk about things that matter to parents. You know, one of the reasons I was motivated to start this podcast recently, my kids are all in sports, right? My kids have done everything. They've done baseball, jujitsu, hockey, um, football, rock climbing, and they've done everything. So as far as from a parent's point of view, I would, obviously, you guys know what I do for a living. I do this for a living. I train athletes for a living. I'd always be in the background, and I love watching practices. I want to see how coaches are interacting with my kids. As a parent, we all want what's best for our kids, and we want our kids to have fun. We want them to develop. We want them to grow. So I'm always in the background, like watching, and obviously, the lens that I view other coaches from might not be fair, simply because a lot of these coaches are, hey, they're like me, they're dads, and they're like, hey, I'll volunteer, I'll go coach, and I think it's awesome. The difference is my lens being that I do this as a profession. It might not be fair how I judge them, but I started seeing a lot of things that I was like, man, there's some things that little things that if they were to make these adjustments and how they interacted with kids, how they ran practices, it would be a lot better. And then all the parents of all the kids I train, they would always voice their frustrations, and they would say, man, that you have politics in sports, right? That's always going to be a thing. um, there would be training where they would go, man, like the practices, and they just kept a lot of complaining, a lot of, man, I wish it was like this, I wish it was like that. And I understand all these parents, coaches, we're all doing our best, but I felt like the information was so random, right? You have this random dad coaching, maybe I don't know, flag football, right? And then they go see this random trainer and do some random strength training, and then they go see this other guy for speed, and then they got mom and dad, and what we fail to realize is that we end up having too many cooks in the kitchen, and guess who's the victim? Little Johnny,
Yep.
little Johnny, and they get
Johnny and Timmy.
overwhelmed. So I know David's been in, he grew up as an athlete doing travel ball and all that. So if you want to kind of share some insight on
Yeah,
your journey.
it's definitely a lot, especially for parents. Because I mean, coaches alone, you kind of get what you get. Sometimes you just have coaches in the area who just aren't the best when it comes to understanding how to motivate the kids and how to actually speak to the kids in a way that, because the sports are supposed to be fun. Like competitive drive is supposed to be in there too. You should have a want to win,
Yeah.
but it shouldn't be the only thing you should be seeking to get from the sport. There's learning lessons within it that, unfortunately, due to coaches and even pressures from family, that it just kind of takes away from it. And I remember that was like my biggest gripe, not just the injuries, but the mental side of it, of the pressure you feel from coaches, from family members, parents, whether it's dad being little too much. Um, and so if you want to have your kid have a great experience within it, unfortunately, the coaches side, you can't always get to pick, but as a parent, it's a huge responsibility to understand um, and see it in a certain lens of understanding that this isn't just the sport, that this is also life. There's life lessons within it too to learn, and yeah, just have a really good supportive background can help a kid go a long way.
100%. And I remember during COVID, I'll never forget this. During COVID, we got shut down, right? So a lot of the at the facility I was working at the time, a lot of the college athletes came back because school got closed and everything, right? And I remember talking to a specific athlete. Um, he was training, and I think at the time, I think he was like 19 years old, maybe 20 years old. I think it was in his first or second year of college. I can't remember. And he goes, when athletes show up, we always spend, the first 10 minutes kind of shooting the shit and kind of catching up and talking about sports. And I love to, I'm obsessed with sports. You guys are going to quickly learn how obsessed I am with sports. And I love all sports. I think it's awesome. But he goes, we're talking. I'm like, hey, how's your weekend? This and that. I didn't see you last week. Where were you? And then he goes, Coach, I got to tell you, he goes, I went camping, and I forget where, but he was telling me about his experience camping. And I remember listening to him and him describing going camping, going to the river like a 12-year-old. Now, granted, I'm guessing he was about 20 years old at the time. And he was so excited, and he's talking about, how much fun he had. And he was like really like over the top. Like, I was like, dude, I was like, man, like what, like I gotta figure out where this river's at.
And
Cause
see the magic water out there.
yeah, I was like, man, I don't know what's in the water. And then I asked him, I said, hey, have you ever like been camping before? Have you ever, you know, like what, like you seem super excited. I think it's cool, but what's going on? Is this like your first time ever? And he goes, kind of. He goes, last time I went was when I was 11 years old. This is a baseball player. He played travel ball. He also played on the high school team. He was all over the country traveling, playing baseball. And he said, I never got the opportunity to actually just enjoy myself, to be a kid. I feel like it was robbed from me. I said, oh, okay. He goes, yeah, I'd go to a city, I'd go to Arizona, I'd go somewhere, different state. And, we'd have a little dead time, a few hours, but it was like next game, next game. We're having 2, 3 games, we're in a hotel, get on the airplane, get back home, play some more, train some more, practice on Monday. And he goes, we just never, it just was never a thing. I've traveled a lot, but I've never had the opportunity to just explore, be a kid, socialize. And I was like, oh, okay. So it made sense to me. This same athlete, I want to say about 2 weeks later, this is all going on during COVID. He goes, you know what? He goes, hey, Coach Henry. He goes, I talked to my college coach and I told him I'm done. I was like, whoa, like this kid had been working his whole life, doing all these different things. He was very, very committed. hard worker. Like he checked all the boxes, right? Had skill, had a good arm, could hit the ball far. And he finally got his scholarship. And then he goes, I'm over it. He goes, I don't want to. He goes, I'd rather just hang out with my friends. And I was like, at first, I was like, that sounds kind of stupid, right? And then when I really started to think about it, I was like, oh, dang. Now it gets crazy. I would say in a span of about maybe 2 or 3 months, the exact same scenario, same story of kids being in college in their first, second, or third year saying, I'm done. And the parents, I know these kids' parents, and they're like, we just invested your whole like everything
To get you
into
there at that
to
school
get you to that
wanted and
spot.
stuff. Yeah.
We hit that goal, we hit that peak, and now these athletes are dropping like flies, and they all had the same reason. Because during COVID, all these college athletes, what were they doing? They're going to the beach,
Get
they're
more
going to
time
the
on their
river,
hands now. They're doing things outside the sport
they were doing things outside the sport.
for the first time in their life, probably. Because
Probably, and they all had the same similar story.
I remember in high school there was times where I had practice, and then after practice I had training, and then I have you for training. I have like 2 different training sessions: you with the body, and then the other guy doing external stuff for basketball or actual workouts and stuff. And then yeah, then the sports, and you just get so invested in it, and but you love it in the moment. And then as you get older, and from my experience looking back now, I'm like, damn, I wish I didn't do as much. Because you also see how it can damage the body too in certain ways. Especially if you don't take the time to rest and get back into it. But mentally, to get it out, like you said, how he went to camping, it was his body like, oh, there's more, like life. There's life
Correct.
outside of the sport. And a lot of people don't. I think you need a healthy balance of that
A
growing.
hundred percent. And to kind of put it into perspective, so when that happened during COVID, it was really eye opening. Like hearing that, I'll never forget that story. And then it happened to many athletes after that. This same athlete that ended up quitting, right? I think he quit for he. I don't remember the exact details, but he ended up coming back and playing baseball again after taking about a year off, just getting his body right to feel good. He was always injured. He goes, I just need time to let my body heal. And he said, I need to let my mind heal. I said, okay, cool. He's playing pro baseball now. He took a year off, which from college, came back. He's playing pro baseball. Crazy. I got another story. So I have this other athlete. His name's Antonio. Um, One of the best humans I've ever met. Like this kid was such a competitive athlete. He did anything I asked him to do. He was very respectful, and but a better human than he was an athlete. Right, phenomenal human, and that's kind of like always my goal. In case you're wondering, Functional Speed Academy, that's my company, and build a human first, then make them faster. That's kind of like my thing, trademark. In case you try to steal it. No, so Antonio, he shows up one day. This is probably, I think it's 2021, maybe 2022. 2022. It was about 2 years ago, maybe three. I can't remember. He's burnt out. He shows up and says, hey, coach, I just need to talk to you. And, a lot of these kids I work with are with me for some years, and I develop some really strong bonds with them. And, they'll tell me things that they don't tell mom and dad, and that's awesome. That just shows the level of trust, right? But he was telling me like he was pretty much checked out. He's over it. He was like his body hurts. He's like, I have. He was in travel soccer, so he played soccer for his high school team, and he played travel soccer. Same exact story. But he wasn't all the way checked out. He was just letting me know that like I'm just not in a good mental space. I said, Antonio, I got a perfect solution for you.
I feel like that's a huge reason why a lot of athletes crash out. It like you said, damage to the body, but also the mental pressure from everything.
Correct.
And and not to bring the mood down, but it is a source that it is something that goes into depression. I,
Oh,
I,
for sure.
I remember like in high school, I had so much pressure on me. And I think I also created obviously a lot of pressure on myself to have to succeed. I was like, I need to succeed. I needed to succeed. to an unhealthy point where basketball was my life. That was all I knew was basketball. I didn't know what else to do. And I was like, this is what I want to do. Um, and yeah, I remember when the injuries started coming, the pressure of just the understanding my senior year's coming around the corner. I need to get better. And now I got a labrum tear. And then I get back in 2 weeks later after I'm healed, healthy, doing better than I've ever done before, breaking my wrist. And I'm back and now I got a concussion. And I'm life just, and so I remember there's a huge depression. And I was like, I should not be in high school. Looking back now, I'm like, why was I in high school like depressed and even to a point of like suicidal? Like that's not healthy at all. And I realized that just I never did anything outside of my sport. I never actually tried to see what else was out there, and that was the biggest reason for the depression was I didn't know what else I could do.
Yeah.
Nothing else. I knew nothing else other than basketball, and so it was a huge learning curve for me to try and just figure your life out.
It's interesting that you talked about like the depression and being suicidal and all these different things. I remember not this Olympics, but even the prior Olympics, Simone Biles was talking about her mental health. You're talking about like the most polished gymnast, I think, probably the GOAT when it comes to gymnastics. And she was having mental health issues. And if you understand anything about the gymnastic space, that world is like intense, right? Almost cultish. Like those people don't mess around. Like their work ethic is like second to none. But she was describing her mental health. And I remember this is actually recent. You can look it up. Do you remember Andrew Luck?
Yeah,
Okay,
Colt, he left because yeah,
so there was a podcast he made about a year ago. So he used to be the starting. He was a franchise quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts, and he had injury bug. He was one of those guys, right? But he was like at the time he was probably like top three for sure, top five, and he bounced back from injury after injury after injury. Game one of the season, he had he got injured again. It wasn't a big injury, but it was like you're going to sit down for like 3 or 4 weeks. And everyone was like, man, he just came back from a really big injury, and now he just got another one. And then he was out for 3 or 4 weeks, and there he's like, I'm done. And then so from the time he retired to the time he did the podcasts, I think there was probably like a good 4 year gap, maybe 3 or 4 years. There's some years in between. And then he explained the real reason wasn't the rehab. He goes, it was the mental, the toll it had taken on his body and more so his mind with his family. He said football has been everything from the time he was in Pop Warner, you know, in college. He goes, it was just it wasn't fun anymore, right? It wasn't fun, and it was the mental health. So it's a big thing because if you actually do some research, and I've done a lot of research on mental health, I'm a big advocate of mental health. But if you do research, you'll see that depression and anxiety is the highest it's ever been, just like in the past 10 years. So like from 2014 to now, depression and injuries are the highest it's ever been. Specifically with injuries, I've actually talked about this many times over the years. I share this with parents, but with the advancements in science and training, you would think that injuries would go down, right?
yeah. That's
But let me cut you off for a second. 400% increase in the
that's a lot,
past 10 years. That's not a small problem. A problem is like, man, injuries have gone up by like 30%,
or even like 5%.
5%, 400%
Percent.
increase. So
Yeah.
is it by accident that mental health and physical they go hand in hand, right?
Oh yeah, because if you're out sitting on the bench, like that's not fun. You don't want to be sitting on the bench knowing that you could be playing the game. And on top of that, just with everything going on in life with phones and stuff nowadays, what you're seeing, like that doesn't help out either. So yeah, there's
There's
so many different things applying into it.
correct. Just to kind of we're probably going to do this very often, go on
Yeah.
some rabbit trails, but go back to the story of Antonio. So keep in mind, 2 years. This is about 2 years ago, maybe three. Now I know I'm like, ooh, the writing's on the wall.
Yeah.
Like I don't want him to quit. He's really good, right? So I said, Antonio, I got a homework assignment for you. He goes, okay, coach, what do you want me to do? I said, this weekend I want you to call up some of your friends and you're gonna go to the beach. He goes, okay. He goes like, you want me to like do some sprints in sand, or like he's thinking I'm talking training, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, none of that. Just go have a good time. Don't get arrested. Don't do anything stupid, right? I said, go have a good time. You're not allowed to look at your phone. Don't even take a soccer ball. I don't want to hear the word soccer coming out of your mouth.
You tell- train yourself to rewind and relax.
Yeah, I said, just have a good time with your
Yeah.
friends. And he had a tournament, a showcase that weekend, that same weekend. And he goes, well, coach, I have a showcase. I say, Antonio, you've been working your whole life, right, to be the best soccer player possible, right? Very skilled. And so I said, so what you're telling me is that this one showcase that you have this weekend, if you miss that, all of it was for nothing. That showcase will determine the trajectory of your athletic career. That one showcase. He goes, well, no. Like I said, okay. And it clicked, and I was good friends. His mom and his dad were awesome. I communicated with them, and I let them know, like, listen, like, we got to get the mind right. If the mind's not right, the body's not right. And long story short, I've never told you the story. He goes to the beach, goes with his friends, does his own thing, comes back Monday, tells me how excited. He sounded like the other kid, right?
Yeah.
Tells me how excited, how much fun he had, and messing around, chasing girls, whatever,
Yeah.
right? And I said, so take a guess, David, what kind of training week he had after that?
Phenomenal one.
Phenomenal. He said, I've never seen him train so hard. So about a month later after that, he literally had an insane month. But his mental, I said, Antonio, you don't need to quit the sport. You just need to recharge the battery. I said, there's a difference. And the cool thing about athletes is we don't need a lot. We just need a little, but don't take away the little. About a month later, he texted me. He showed me a screenshot, and he got an offer in Madrid to go play professional soccer, and they were going to pay for his school. I said, he goes, what should I do? I was like, go take it. I was like, go have fun out there.
Yeah.
And isn't it funny how, like, just that little thing he could have quit and just be like, you know what? I'm over it. I've been doing it my whole life. I just want to go to the beach, hang out with my friends. And he didn't do that. We just recharged his battery, his mental battery, came back, got after it, gets an offer. So one of the things that we want to bring to light, not just as a coach, but as a parent, as a prior athlete. I was a prior athlete as well, still am. Once an athlete, always an athlete. Right?
Yeah.
I'll be 90 years old calling myself an athlete.
Still not there.
Right. We want to, as a parent, we want to do what's best for our kids, physically, emotionally, and I feel the biggest thing that's lacking in the performance space, there's no continuity of training, right? And what people fail to realize when it comes to developing little Johnny, who's 8 years old, hitting home runs, right? They forget that true athletic development is always two-sided. You have the physical development, which we're going to talk a lot about that, like where the skill fit, speed training, strength training, conditioning, all that, right? So there's that physical element, but there's also a psychological element. Imagine if I were to sit my son down. I have a 10-year-old. I have a, well, think about that for a second. 10, 7, 5. But imagine if I sat down with my kids and I was like, hey, check this out, Jackson. We're going to talk about economics and taxes. And I started breaking down these like intense topics about like economics. It's going to go in one ear.
Out the other.
It's going to come out the other. And it's not because they're not smart, is because their psychology doesn't comprehend the same level of stress that me as an adult, like, hey, I have responsibilities, I got to do some adulting, right? They don't understand adulting because they're not there yet.
They don't have a need nor a want to learn it, so therefore they're not going to take it seriously either.
They're not going to take it serious, and
Yeah.
it just won't make sense.
Yeah.
So the same way there is physical athletic development. Athletic development to me is a scope of both of physical and mental. And saying, so like, for example, one of the things I've been studying for many years, I've probably been studying this for about 10 years, And this research has been around for, I want to say, long time, probably like 30 years. It's called LTAD, long-term athletic development. It's a developmental process of training used from the time a child's born until the time they're like 18 plus. And it just pretty much breaks down different phases of training, like learning how to move, learning how to learn, learning how to train, learning how to win. It just talks about the physical and the psychological development for every stage. Um, and what I want to do is I want to kind of bring to light that the same way I can't talk to my kids about taxes and economics at 10 years old, there's a time and place for that. There will be a time when it's like, hey, let's learn about economics a
Yeah.
little bit, right? But what I find is a lot of the coaching, and I don't want to say it's bad intentions. I'm going to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. I don't think there's any dad out there. I don't think there's any coach, whether you're a team coach, a skills coach, a trainer. I genuinely believe 99%, 0.9 of coaches do not have bad intentions.
I'd be willing to bet, yeah, those 99.9% of coaches that if you gave them the statistics, the facts, and showcased how the brain functions and all, and gave them the foundation of how to change what they needed to change into the new method, they'd all gravitate over towards it if they understood it.
If they understood, there's a lack
Yeah.
of education there, right? But unfortunately, the way we're approaching athletics, it's not, we're messing our kids up, right? It's kind of like I was talking to some of my boys, some of my high school seniors. Um, Shout out to those guys. Those guys crushing it. And they were talking about process, right? We are talking about like having a process, like not just a process being like a hierarchy of things that you're doing to achieve an ultimate goal, right? And I told them, I'm very facetious, and I was telling them, I said that I think the big issue with sports is most people, it's the blind leading the blind, right? Everybody's trying to copy each other with a recipe that doesn't work. And the reason I can confidently say that is because a lot of these kids that I know that are trying to go to college, they're not getting offers, right? They work very, very hard. It's not because of their work ethic, right? And what they're doing is their mindset is like, if I just outwork my competition, I'm going to get a scholarship. And I said, look, the chances of you getting a D1 scholarship, like if you want to play baseball for UCLA, you want to go play football for USC, and you want to be their starting quarterback, I said, do you realize that you're competing against every quarterback in the country, including the two people who are already on the roster, or two or three? I said, your chances are like 1 in 30,000. So the chances of you going to college and getting this full ride at this university, and I was like, this is not me being negative. I said, this is just me being factual. Everybody knows this, right? And if you want to go professional, you might as well go start playing the lotto, because you have a better chance of winning the lottery, right?
How many college teams are out there? D1 college teams?
I don't know off the top of my head, but if you compare that to the pool of how many high schools,
Yeah, there are too. Because now you're
right?
talking, well, if you have 10,000 high schools, that's probably the actual number, but if you only have, it's if the number ratio equal, that's like 10 colleges total. You got all those kids you compete just to get on one of those 10 teams, and then you got to beat the 3 dudes who are already on that.
That are super seniors, right? They're
Yep. And if you
20,
had
21 years.
like 3 professional teams at state, now you have to get onto the professional teams. It's a whole
The
break.
math is crazy. The
Yeah.
math is crazy. So what I told the kids, I was like, listen, I said, everybody's copying each other, doing the same stuff, right? They're like, I'm just going to train harder. I'm going to lift harder. I'm going to do more hitting lessons than everybody else. Like, I'm like, and then at a certain point, I'm like, more is not the answer, because if that was the formula that worked, then I would be like, hey, here's the formula where, you have a 1 in 10 chance of going to college. Like, but everybody's doing a formula that literally doesn't work. And one of the reasons why I want to do this podcast is because I wanted to give some insight into the process that does work. I've been very fortunate to work with a lot of really successful athletes, and like this year alone, my entire senior class has gotten an offer. 100%. Another ratio. That's a crazy stat. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I'm just saying what is.
Yeah. No, you're speaking what is real.
Okay, here's another crazy stat. There's over a 90% chance of an athlete getting hurt and banged up throughout the year, where they have to miss games and miss tournaments, right? I haven't had a major injury among any of my athletes. I've had athletes who show up injured. That doesn't count. I'm talking about they stay with me, they stick to the process. I haven't had a major injury in over 10 years. Not many people can say that. So what I want to do, it's not that I have this like secret sauce, and because here's the thing about, I'm going to quiz you a little bit, David. No particular order. I'm going to name all the ingredients that are required in order to succeed at the highest level in any sport, whether you're 10 years old, 16, college, or even a pro athlete. I'm going to name any of these things, and then you tell me if I said anything that you've never heard of before. Okay? No particular order.
99.9%.
Okay? So, and then you guys too, they're going to be like, I'm going to name the ingredients of success. Okay?
Don't judge me.
Strength, speed, reactive power, rotational power, mobility, flexibility, conditioning, skill, mindset, sleep, nutrition, recovery. I don't know. That's what I could think of off the top of my head. Did I say anything that sounds foreign to you?
I think 2 of them.
Which one?
It was very beginning.
Strength?
No. Maybe you went too fast and I didn't quite hear it properly, but I
do
think
this one more time.
Yeah,
all right. Take 2, you guys. We're live. Strength. We good with that?
Go with that one.
Speed.
Speed. Got that one.
Power.
Yep.
Elastic power. Rotational power.
No.
The ability to express power through rotation.
Probably
like throwing.
Heard the words, but never.
Throwing, or maybe if you're a baseball player. Baseball guys, you guys know what I'm talking about. Softball too, we gotta give you some love. Okay.
Or maybe you did a long time ago, but that's like 7-8 years ago.
That's
now.
all good. That's all good. That's all good. Okay, but did I say anything that so you're like, oh, I've never heard of this?
No, it was
Speed, agility, right? Reaction time, balance. Like there's all these ingredients, right? So, and if I lay out all these ingredients, I don't think anybody goes, oh, I've never heard of speed. I've never heard like unless you're living under a rock, like everybody knows these are the ingredients we need, right? Work ethic, right? Consistency. Like this is nothing I'm saying is like foreign. And these are all things I have athletes do. The question is, why does it work for me? And why is it not consistent across the board? I know there's a lot of great coaches out there, especially here in the Temecula Valley, that are also having equal success. So I want to give them a shout out. They'll probably be on the podcast. But the question is, if everyone's doing all the ingredients, why isn't everybody getting the same results? Why are the results so skewed? Why is it so, like, you could have 2 athletes, they're like, yeah, I do all those things, and then one athlete's getting crazy results and the other one's not. And this is an analogy I use with parents. I use it with athletes. You ever watch the cooking show, Gordon Ramsay?
Gordon Ramsay. Which
Hell's
one?
Kitchen. Any of them.
Because I know he has the ones where he does the competitions. He has the one where he goes over to.
Okay, let's take one. Let's just take. I think all his shows tend to almost like be the same, right? So let's say, for example, if you ever watch any of his shows, I think it's Hell's Kitchen. I don't know which one's which, but he'll usually have a challenge, right? And then the camera will be like, we got this crazy world-class kitchen behind us, right? And they go, we have every ingredient possible, like the top end ingredients, everything you need to make like gourmet food. And then he'll give them a challenge, and he'll say, okay, I need you guys to go make me whatever dish. You got 1 hour, go. And then after the hour, that's the entertaining part. We know exactly what happens. He pretty much goes one by one, telling them how awful of a human they are. He throws some colorful words in there. He tastes their food and he goes, awful, too much seasoning. Next person, not enough seasoning. Next person, you cooked it too long. You overcooked it. Next person, you undercooked it.
Calls him an idiot sandwich.
Right? Next person, he's just like, And then us, we're the spectators, we're in the background watching the show, and we're just like, wait a second, like I would eat that. That looks delicious. I'm sure like whatever he thinks is disgusting, we probably think it's delicious, right? And then there's always gonna be that, and there's always that one person that he takes a bite, and then you see his eyes light up, and he's just like, the presentation, the mix of flavor, perfect, right?
Everything about it.
And
Yeah.
he gives him that little card, and I haven't seen the show in a while, but how is it possible that these are some of the top chefs on the planet, and no one had like an advantage or a disadvantage. They actually all had an advantage because they had the top ingredients on the planet. They're like, dude, we have this kitchen with everything you need. Just go, you got an hour, make me this dish. And the reason one was successful versus the other ones not being up to his liking is because of micro dosaging. So micro dosaging is not that I'm missing an ingredient. If you're missing an ingredient as an athlete, like, oh, I just never do speed training, you got a really big problem. I never do mobility. I never do skill work. Like that's a big problem. But I'm talking about the athletes who check all the boxes. I'm doing the strength training. I'm doing the speed work. I'm doing the skill. I'm doing the conditioning. I'm doing all those things, right? The reason these athletes are not successful is because they need more of something or less of something else. But everybody takes the approach of more is better.
So it's kind of like looking at it in the sense of you're doing the same thing, but for him, he's really good at side to side lateral movements, but you guys only train forward movements, which works for him, but you're really good at forward movements, which is like a lateral. So now you need to make sure that your training can't look exactly the same as his because you require a different.
It depends. So, not your favorite answer. I apologize. It was my phone. The answer is always going to be it depends, simply because every athlete's different, right? So if I took two athletes, even if they were in the same sport, right? So if I took an athlete, um, let's say I took two baseball players, everything about them is going to be different, right? Their profile, their strengths, their weaknesses, their what I call their prerequisites, the amount of mobility, flexibility, coordination, you know, motor connection. Like there's so many different things they have to do, right? So the trick, I don't know, I hate to even use the word trick. I don't know if that's the best word, but the trick to getting this athlete to excel is finding out what ingredient do they need. The more temperature, do they need less temperature, do they not have enough seasoning, do they need less seasoning. Imagine if one of those chefs was just like, oh, let me just put more salt on it, like he'd probably lose his mind, right? But that's what I see. So when I'm seeing these kids that are like lacking certain things, I find that the reason they're struggling to excel at the level that they want to excel is they're doing the right thing at the wrong time, or they're doing too much of this, not enough of that. That's always the issue. And once we can figure out, like, okay, we have an athlete A, and then B being their goal is to, I don't know, throw the ball harder, right? Run a route faster, have an explosive double leg takedown. I don't know, depending on what sport you have. We have to figure out how to fill in like the right ingredient dosage, right? That's called micro dosaging. I have to figure out what are the things that they're missing. Number one, are they neglecting certain things? Number two, are they spending too much time on something and not enough on something else? And the way I like to categorize everything, this is the way I do it. This is my lens, if you want to kind of get a little insight into how I view things. I always put everything into one of three boxes. You have a skill, right? That's like top of the pyramid. If you get more skill, I dominate. So I don't care what sport you have. Nobody can deny that if the skill is higher, you're going to succeed. You're going to get those offers, right? If I don't care if you're a 10-year-old athlete and let's say you're playing football and all of a sudden you develop more skill and your hands are really good and you can catch the ball well, you're going to be more successful at your sport. Regardless of sport, all sports require skills. Skills to me are specificity of movement with precision. That's how I define skill. So everybody says, man, how do I get more skill? That's always going to be the ultimate goal, right? I don't care what athlete you are, everybody wants more skill. It's undeniable that if you have more skill, you're more successful in
I want
sport.
to get my ball handling better. I want to get my shot better. I want to be able to move on defense laterally better to keep up with my, you know, all those different specifics that they're coming in with.
Okay, that's the skill. But there's two more blocks, and I call them prerequisites. Prerequisites are building blocks that allow us to have more skill. Below that is athlete. You need to be more athletic. It's undeniable that if an athlete becomes more athletic, skill acquisition feels easier. You know, we've all met that athlete who maybe starts a sport kind of late, right? And then they shine. I remember one of my boys. He's hockey. He played, well, two of my boys. Technically, all three of my kids play hockey, but my middle child, he hockey. It clicked for him, right? He just figured it out really quickly, and I was like, cool. And his first season, he was playing 6U, and he was averaging like 10 goals a game. You're not supposed to do that in hockey, right? And I remember a parent asking, like, oh, what organization or what team did your son play in before? I said, he's never played. We just bought him a stick like 2 weeks ago. And they're like, what in the world? They're like, okay, I can't make this story up. So someone asked my wife this question. This same person ends up asking me, it's like, hey, how long has your son been playing? Where did he play at before?
On the street 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. I mean, he skates all the time. Like he messes around, but he's never been on a team, never played a league.
Yeah.
Can't make this up. Asked my mother-in-law, which is my kid's grandma, was there, and the same person asked the grandma, where has he played at before? It's like they were trying to catch us in a lie. Because in their mind, I understand the logic is like, no, sandbagging, right? He's played somewhere, he's done some private lessons, something.
Make your son look better than he actually is. Like,
yeah, making it sound like he's just, oh yeah, he just started. And the reality of that is, as you guys heard earlier, my kids do everything, right? I make them do everything because my goal right now is motor skills. I want movement variability. They rock climb, they do jujitsu, they do everything, football, and then they live outside. Like I cannot get them to come inside the house. They're outside playing with their friends all the time, playing tag, skating, skateboarding, playing basketball. Like
what kids are supposed to be
doing what kids are supposed to be doing, right? And the reason I believe my kid hockey clicked for him is because he's a good athlete. So the second building block, so we have skill at the top. Middle we have athlete, which my definition of athlete is the ability to move well through space while performing a task. And then we have a layer below that, and this is where a lot of people get in trouble. Everybody knows that if you're a better athlete, skill acquisition feels easier, right? It's a no-brainer. But what are the prerequisites to skill? Human, structural integrity. Do they have good mobility? Do they have good flexibility? Do they know how to breathe? Do they have the right mindset?
Does the body communicate with each other well?
Yeah. Is there, like, do they have these good tools? Yeah. Right? Do they have functioning tools? You know, do they know how to move through space? Do they have balance? Like these are such, you might look at them as nuance because if I ask anybody how important is balance, this is one of the things I focus a lot on when I get kids, especially if they're like, I train 5-year-olds as well, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds. I do a lot of fun games, but I test out their balance, their ability to problem solve with their own body, right? And I was talking to a dad yesterday, and he goes, "Man, that balance stuff is awesome." And I asked him, I said, "How important is balance?"
Super. You do it in everything.
Right? It's super important, right? He goes, "Oh yeah, that's so important." And he was talking about his son plays baseball, and he was talking about, oh yeah, being able to transfer weight from his back leg to his front leg on a throw, because I believe his son is 10 years old. His 10-year-old is already having elbow issues at 10 years old. He said after he's throwing, his arm hurts. And I watched him throw. It looked like both his feet were like rooted into the ground at the same time, and there was no transfer of force. He had no balance. Okay. So I asked him, I said, how important is balance? He goes, so important. I said, okay, cool. I said, what happens if we lose balance? What do we lose as an athlete when balance is lost? He goes, everything. I said, exactly. You lose coordination, you lose power, force output, you lose all your athleticism.
Not only that, but it opens up a whole door to specific types of injuries too, right?
Yeah,
Because
you can have injuries. That's that too.
now you don't have that strength within those stabilizing muscles and stuff working also as well.
But just the ability to control yourself,
Yeah.
right? Balance is, controlling your center of mass over your base of support, your feet. And he goes, man, he was just blown away on the balance training. I said, okay, now that we know how important it is, how often do you train it? Crickets. He goes, we don't train it at all. I said, how often does he train it at practice? Never. So I named, we did balance and we also did some like ankle mobility. It was like, if you saw the session, you'd be like, really? That's it? But if you understand prerequisites and you understand how performance works, if I gave someone better balance and more mobile ankles, and then I said, go do this exercise, I had him do some plyo jumps. We call it cross the river. You were there. And we were having him like jump from one foot to the other, learning how to transfer force. And his balance immediately improved, and his ability to perform a plyometric, it looked way better. And then at the end, I said, throw this football. So he started throwing a football, and all of a sudden, guess what you saw? The carryover. He saw his weight on one foot transferring to the other foot,
Shifting over.
and the dad was just like blown away. And the reality is, I didn't do anything like extraordinary. I didn't do anything that was like secret, right? All I did was train smart. I said, look, we want more skill. You want your son to throw the ball harder. Well, he needs to be athletic. He has to be able to move. And then to be able to move, we need good tools, meaning your joints, your ability to breathe, your own body. Structurally and neurologically, he needs to be sound. So if we build this, this complements the next layer, which complements the skill. And he goes, it made too much sense. So to kind of go back to, like I was talking about all the ingredients and how to build like an elite athlete, speed, strength, we have to understand like where things fit. And once we understand where things fit, like what box, then we can help our athletes be successful.
Yeah. It's such a when you hear it, you're like, oh, it's so simple, but yet no one does it. And I remember we were having that conversation the other day, and you're sharing that viewpoint, that lens of looking at it. I was like, yeah, it's on paper it's so simple, and yet we don't ever think about it. Like, yeah, in order to do that, this has to be functioning well. In order for my car to, go faster, I have to have the proper parts within the car itself to be able to work properly to do that speed. And it's kind of the same with your body. You got to give it the right tools and the right things for it to be able to complete that.
Correct. So
We don't think of it that way.
no, we don't think of it that way.
No.
We just kind of like throw stuff at the wall and hopefully it sticks. You have no idea. Like I'll give you an example. I'll have, and this is kind of like a universal answer for like athleticism, right? People will. I know this just from my own experience with working with athletes, but I also know this from jujitsu. I actually learned a lot. A lot of guys in jujitsu, they're like, "Man, I need to be more athletic." Right? Everybody wants to be more athletic, and it seems like the universal ingredient to athleticism is to just get stronger. Right? So everybody goes, "Man, I remember." Oh man, the amount of times I've heard "just get stronger." Such a, oh yeah, just like as a matter of fact, like, you do this, you're gonna go to the NFL. Like, oh, you do this, you'll be a world champion.
But
Like,
no, there's more to it.
just get stronger. Like
Yeah,
they say it as a matter of fact, and
the part to the puzzle.
because people think that strength. First of all, you got to be able to define strength. Strength is the ability to produce force, right?
But then you can even get more specific. It's the
You got
way
to
of,
be more specific. First of
yeah.
all, strength is a subcategory of athlete. So I have three categories. I have human, I have athlete, and I have skill. So strength work falls under the category of what? Being more athletic. So I'm not going to deny it's not one of the ingredients, but it's like it's one tiny small one, right? So yeah, you can produce force, but now we got to figure out like, so then they do things like, oh, let me just increase my squat, my deadlift. Let me, if I could bench more, then maybe I could throw harder. Maybe when someone mounts me, I can just push them off of me, throw them off of me.
Instead of just actually strengthening the actual movement you're using too.
Well, it's a microwave approach, right?
Yeah.
They are saying that if I just get stronger, it's just going to cure my athleticism or my lack of athleticism, and it's just going to automatically transfer over to more skill. But the reality is, if strength is your ability to produce force or resist force too, it could be both, um, then all I'm doing is I'm teaching a person how to produce force relative to the exercises that they're doing, right? So here's a simple biological law of specificity. Your body adapts to the specific things that we do, right? So if I increase let's say, for example, if I increase my squat, just because I can squat, let's say 500 pounds, does that mean by default I can deadlift 500 pounds?
Nope.
But what if I said, well, they're both for the legs?
But they require different motions within the
Okay.
body to function.
So strength is specific to the demand, right? So the same way I can't be like, okay, just because I can bench 300, I can overhead press 300. That's not how it works, right? Because strength is vector specific, it's direction specific. If I can't say that about an exercise translating to another exercise, then why the hell would I say that the bench or the deadlift translates to me throwing a ball harder? Ooh, now you're seeing the problem.
Yeah.
So the the issue that exists in the realm of sports is people are on a gross level, they understand like, yeah, strength helps athleticism. Like, yeah, that's true, but what type of exercise are we doing? What type of strength,
Yeah.
right? And we do these, I call it the microwave approach, right? Same thing with speed. Oh my God, I'm obsessed with speed. You guys are going to learn. We haven't talked much about speed today, but that's another topic. Like, if I could just get my athlete to be faster, then they'll be a better basketball player. They'll be better at running routes. They'll be able to base steal. And I'm like, okay. So then I ask them, do you do speed work? And then most people go, oh, yeah, I do speed work. And then when they describe it to me, I'm like, that's not speed work. That's conditioning, right? Doing suicides and
Pedal to the floor.
right. So a lot of the speed work that everybody quote unquote says they do, it's not even speed training, because if you take any modality of training, right? So let's say I do strength work, I should feel strong afterwards. If I do conditioning, I should feel like my conditioning is improved. If I do power work, I should feel more powerful. If I do speed work, I should feel
Faster.
faster. I hate to make it sound that simple, right? But I asked them, I said, do you actually feel faster? They go, no. And then they describe how they're doing it. I find out that they're doing very short rest periods. It becomes more of like suicides, and they're running lines. I'm like, okay, your coach is doing conditioning, but he's calling it speed work. Just because you call something doesn't mean it is that, right? Same thing with power. Power is very important. Like like speed and power. If I'm gonna pick a bias, this is probably gonna be my two things: speed and power. I'm very biased. I love those two things. Um, More power in anything is awesome, right? But then people ask people like, they go, yeah, I train power. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. What do you do? And then they describe what they do, and I'm like, that's not power. I'm like, that's training, that's training to failure, or whatever they're describing. So I feel like there's this disconnect. Like, people understand, like, okay, I need speed, I need this, I need that, and even coaches will say things such as like, hey, your athlete's not getting playing time. He needs to be more explosive. So like, we have all these buzzwords, right? And then the parent goes, okay, I gotta go do explosive training. So they go on YouTube and they go to a local trainer or whatever, and they go, I need power, I need speed. And then they go, okay, cool, we got a deadlift. and then
And then you'll become faster.
and then you'll become faster, the deadlift, and then they give this like they give this explanation of how this thing is going to complement this thing. And then I'm just in the background just thinking like, oh my God, they don't understand like basic biological principles. They don't understand like what power training is. They don't understand energy systems training. I understand, like, I'm not saying you need to know everything, but if you're teaching something, then you better at least understand that topic, right? So then I ask people, I always ask athletes all the time. I ask them questions like, what is power? What is speed? Because everybody goes, oh, I always ask them, who here wants to be faster? Everyone raises their hand. Who wants more power? Everybody raises their hand. And then I ask them, can you define what power is? Crickets. So I said, you want something, you don't even know what that something is. So how am I going to get better at something if I think this random thing I'm doing is going to magically translate to more power, and I don't even know what power is? How could I get good at something if I don't even know what that something is? So then I'm like, power is strength times speed. Strength times velocity equals power. I said, how much velocity training are you doing? How much strength work are you doing? How much sprint work are you doing? Once we're able to define what things are, then we can fill in the blanks and be like, okay, we're going to train this to enhance this attribute. And I feel like most people will use buzzwords and they don't fully understand what the buzzword is. Like, we're going to do explosive training, we're going to do reactive, we're going to do power. Those are like the buzzwords, right? We're going to do conditioning. So one of the things that I want to do uh, with the podcast is I want to simplify the training process, so that way your 10-year-old, your 15-year-old, and if you're those dads that are still athletes out there and you're in that adult basketball league, we can go dominate. We can have fun and actually train the right way. Because just like Gordon Ramsay, how he'll dissect people and say, man, you use the right ingredient. He never talks about the ingredients. He talks about the amount, right? He goes, the temperature was too high. There was not enough of this, too much of that. And what I want to do is I want to shed light on the athletic development process, so that way we can impact more athletes and make sure that they're dominating. So it's not necessarily us changing, like, I'm not going to come over here and come up with some new fancy word that you've never heard of. Like, we're going to do levitating. We're going to teach your athlete how to levitate. Like, we're not doing anything. We're not reinventing physics, right? We're going to talk about the physics. We're going to talk about the biology, and we're going to talk about the psychology, and we're going to marry those together, so that way your athlete can, number one, have fun. Being hurt is not fun.
No, it sucks.
And making sure we're keeping the 6 inches between the ears healthy and sharp.
Yeah, because I know my goal, at least like my motivation and why I started doing this was originally, and it still is true, I wanted to give kids the choice. For me, I felt like I didn't have the choice as much. I felt like injuries told me no.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like I want to be able to give someone the opportunity to go to college if they want to go to college, play at a college level. And like you tell me your students, they go out, they have fun, and they realize, it's not for me anymore. They made the choice. They realized that there was more to life, and being a coach that can also showcase that to them. It's like, hey, look, this sport is great, and it can do a lot for you, financially if you get to the level where you need to be, especially in college nowadays. There's so many sponsorships and stuff they're getting paid now. And so I was like, there is, but at the same time, is the money worth depression? Is the money worth mental, like things that can come with it? So it's like, understand where you are. But that's my goal is I want to give them the choice and the understanding that there is more to life. And at the same time, prevent the injuries too, to give them that choice to stop instead life, injuries, career ending things, tell them that they can't anymore. And I want to give them what I couldn't have. I feel like I couldn't have.
And that's awesome that you say that. My story, I didn't even talk about like my athletic background. So, um, because we always make the statement like, man, I wish I knew this back then, right?
Yeah.
I say that pretty much about everything, right? My background, I grew up playing sports. I played basketball. The basketball is probably my main sport. I was obsessed with basketball, and to this day, it's probably the sport I'm best at. Um, I wrestled, I did track and field, and then I did football, right? And then I did some powerlifting. I've done in my adult life, I've done jujitsu, and I've done basketball, of course. But going back when I was playing sports, I was that I was obsessed. I really was. I was obsessed with getting better. I was obsessed with working out. I started lifting weights at 13 years old, and I was just telling somebody this morning because I told you guys earlier I was sick last week that I've never taken a week off in my entire life from exercise, not even when I'm on vacation, unless I'm sick.
And in that case, it just kind of more so changes as to what you're doing, what your exercise is considered for that day.
Okay, so with my obsession, um, you would think that I went very, very far. I didn't. I got a little offer from Fullerton to wrestle, a little partial scholarship. I ended up tearing my shoulder my senior year, and obviously that didn't work out. I got some scholarships to go to UCR, San Bernardino. But I didn't go as far as I could have. And it's because I knew nothing about the athletic development part. Now, granted, I'm first generation. So I'm first generation. My parents and my sister, they're all from Nicaragua. So that's a whole nother story. But I
learn
pretty
more
much
about
grew
you
up.
every day. I say I learn more about you every day.
So that's where my family's from. I was born in New York. I've been out here since I was, I think, 4 years old, 5. My dad was stationed in the military. California, gets out the military. He goes, hey, cost of living in New York and California are the same. We're going to stay in California. We got better weather. So I stayed out here, but growing up first generation, I grew up very poor, like very, very poor. Um, I didn't know it. I didn't know I was poor until I was an adult, right? That means I had a great childhood, right? But because of our circumstances, I was unable to do like travel ball, basketball. I couldn't do that. All the camps, all the, like the speed and agility camps, and I couldn't do that. Basketball camps, I couldn't do that. Um, I was very fortunate. I would always be picking people's brains. So like if one of my friends went and did like a basketball camp, and like, what did you learn? We didn't have YouTube back then, so I couldn't even be like, all right, I'm just gonna go online.
Yeah,
I
couldn't
was
do it.
obsessed with Michael Jordan. I saw what I saw on TV, and I went in the backyard and I tried to duplicate it. So because of my circumstances growing up, not being able to do any type of sport, the only sport I did was in high school, and in middle school I did basketball for the school. And even then, I was mowing lawns, I was washing cars just to pay for my cleats, to pay for my basketball shoes, to pay for my uniform. I grew up in very like I said, my childhood was great. I love my mom and dad to death. They instilled some good morals in me and principles, and I think it was awesome. I didn't know I was poor
Yeah,
until I looked back and I was like, oh man, that's why I couldn't do all that stuff.
yeah,
That's why my parents never got me a pair of Jordans.
yeah.
But looking back, I'm like, man, if I had some direction and I had some coaching, man, I could have gone very far. So one of the things I want to just kind of close up with this is there's going to be athletes like me that maybe they were very motivated as kids and they were driven, obsessed, but they didn't have the right coaching because of their circumstances. There's going to be athletes like Coach David, where maybe he goes, man, it wasn't approached the best way possible, right? I could have done it differently. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually in the process of like launching some clinics, something I've been doing for many, many years. I started doing this in 2016 where I will always give back. I will give a clinic to an organization, to kids. I do scholarships and sponsorships where kids who can't afford it, I will be like, hey, we're going to do a speed and agility clinic. Because when I help out those kids, I kind of feel like I'm helping myself out. I really do. Because I remember, I'll never forget this. My wrestling coach in high school, we had a big tournament. Those tournaments, for anybody who's ever wrestled, those tournaments are like 2 days long, and they're from 6 a.m. to like 9 p.m., right? And I remember telling my coach, I was like, Coach, I don't think I'm going to be able to go. What he didn't know was that when you go to tournaments, you got to eat, right? And my parents were like, we can't even give you money for food. So we're going to come up with some bullshit excuse on why you can't go. Right. So like, I'm like, you're going to have to eat breakfast, lunch, dinner out there. You're going to have to pay the fee for the tournament fee. And we don't think we can do it. I'm a man, my parents, they did everything to give me the best life possible, but we just, first generation, we didn't know better. And my wrestling coach he goes, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. I was like, blew my mind away. How much did he blow my mind away? This is probably one of the reasons why I'm doing this. I'm doing this as a career, and I'll never forget the coaches who inspired me. His name is Coach Mongia. At the time, he was in his 60s. He has to probably be in his late 80s now. I'll never forget my wrestling coach in high school, and I'll never forget my youth pastor who actually taught me how to play basketball. He was really good, so I was very lucky, and I had people pouring into me when I was a kid, and that allowed me to do that. And I was like, you know what? I want to return that favor. I want to do the same thing. Yeah, that's probably, to be honest, it might be one of the reasons why I was obsessed,
Yeah,
you know.
I
But
know.
I know there's kids in the Temecula Murrieta Valley, here where I live, where we live, that they have all this potential. And whatever your story is, we know everybody has their own story. So part of our podcast isn't just to educate you and help you out and help parents, but we also want to give back. So anytime we have clinics, things of that nature, um, we're going to be letting you guys know like when those clinics are going to be at, where they're going to be at, and we'll make it so nobody gets to miss out. So
That'd be awesome.
pretty good. Pretty good. Just to kind of close it up, you guys, thank you guys for tuning in. This is our first time ever doing it. We literally thought of this about a month ago,
Yeah.
and we're 100% motivated to impact the next generation, and we want to impact parents because at the end of the day, the parents and the coaches are the ones that tell the kids what to do.
We're we quite literally are the building blocks for their future. And it's not just within the sport, it's within life. And you have to make sure everything you do with them, you're looking at with that kind of a lens and understanding everything has a learning lesson, make sure the learning lesson is being taught and to have a positive experience with it too, though. It
There you
goes a
go.
long way.
There you go. I'm excited, you guys. I really am. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I guess we will see you guys. We'll see you guys next time.
We'll see you on the next one.
All right. Thank you.